So as you probably all know, Transport Canada is now requiring that all drone flyers take and pass an online test before they fly their drone. A major criticism that has been made against Transport Canada with respect to this new test requirement is that Transport Canada does not provide study guides. A lot of people rightly ask, how is it possible to pass a test if no study guides are provided? In this video, I am going to give you some strategies on how to study for the drone test, even without study guides. So if you're interested in knowing how to do this, stay tuned and I'll be right back. So like everybody else, I was quite upset that Transport Canada did not provide study guides that would enable me to study for the online test and would give me the information that I need to get a reasonable grade, a passing grade, so that I can go out and fly my drone this coming June 1st. I was so upset about it, I contacted Transport Canada to get information about the rationale behind not making a study guide available. And this is what they told me.
So there isn't a comprehensive study guide. There's additional resources, I think, that are on the same page where you find that knowledge guide, but if not, I can send you those as well. It's somewhere on the drone safety site. But there's nothing compiling all that information together. You've got to find that on your own.
Okay, but I'm sorry, I don't quite understand that. How can I study for the test if you don't give me the information that I need to study? I don't get it.
The knowledge guides let you know what topics to study, and then it's your job to go out there and look at the resources that are, throughout the website. Also, there's like publications and books and whatever you need to get that information. For example, we have on the Transport Canada website, we have study guides for like recreational and private pilot licenses, which have a wealth of knowledge and references to the cars. We also have, in the supplementary references, there's, what is the name of it? Well, there's like, meteorology guides and things like that in there as well. Yeah, but nothing comprehensive.
But why aren't there study guides? If you're asking us to do an exam or a test, why aren't there actual study guides?
I understand the purpose of the exam is to get drone pilots who may or may not have aviation backgrounds familiar with this information by having them go out and look for it.
What? What? Sorry.
So we provide you with the information on what you need to know, and then, it's up to you to find that information.
What? How does that make any sense?
I'm not sure. I don't understand why it wouldn't make sense.
Well,
I can definitely understand why it would be helpful to have a comprehensive study guide with everything all in one place.
Well,
and I'm not sure if they're working on one or not. But currently, this is all there is.
Well, but when I go to school and I have a test on the material that I studied, I'm given the material first to know what I need to study to get.
So we do let you know what you need to study.
Yeah, but the actual content.
So I guess the point that they are making is the content's out there, and they'd like you to go look for it.
But why?
Because it's going to help build your knowledge base. There's a lot of topics on this exam that the average drone pilot might not be familiar with because, not everyone's in aviation. So it kind of makes it more proactive for you to go out and look for it.
I've never heard of that. It's like saying you need to take a driving test, but we won't provide the information that you need to know in order to pass the written test.
Yeah, it's definitely less helpful than having a driver's manual where all the information is in one place. I mean, I can't speak any further as to why that's all I know, and I know there's not anything other than the references and the knowledge guide.
All right. So as I understand it, Transport Canada wants you to go out and learn more than you'll need to know so that when June 1st comes, you'll be ready to take that drone out and fly in public. I'm not sure that I agree with their strategy, but given the fact that it is not likely that they're going to come out with study guides, I decided that I would do my best to learn the material that they would probably ask on the test. Now, while there is no official study guide, there is a document on the Transport Canada website that points you in the direction of what you'll need to know. This guide is absolutely essential to figuring out the information that you'll need to have before writing the test. So in order to write the test, you'll need to access this document as well as a couple of other documents. So the first place you'll need to go to access this information is the drone safety page on the Transport Canada website. There are two documents on this page that you'll need. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you will see links to a number of documents. The document that lists the categories of the information that you'll need to know is the one called Knowledge Requirements for Pilots of Small Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems. If you scroll up the page, under Most Requested, you'll see a number of links. The link that's most important here is the regulations amending the Canadian Aviation Regulations for Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems. So these are the two most important documents that you'll need to work with. The other two documents that should be used as a reference are the full CARS, which stands for Canadian Aviation Regulations, and the AIM document, which is the Aeronautical Information Manual. These are extremely long and technical documents which, for the most part, you will not need, especially if you're only trying out for the basic certification. I myself didn't really use them very much. I scanned them, I looked them over very quickly, but I didn't really have a major need for any one of these two documents. What I would do, however, is skim these documents to get a sense of the kinds of things that they cover. And when you take the test, they may come in handy, especially if you have to do a quick search. So now that you have the relevant documents, here's how I would go about studying for the test. Now, this is the way I went about studying for it. I think it worked for me, and I'm giving you this suggestion for how to study in the hopes that it might work for you as well. So first and foremost, quickly read over the regulations amending the Canadian Aviation Regulations for remotely piloted aircraft systems. This is a fairly long document, but it's not that long that it is impossible to read. Read it over quickly. Get a sense of what this document is about, because by reading this document over, you'll get a sense of the terminology in the document as well as the kind of jargon that's used in legislation. So once you read this document over, open up the Knowledge Requirements for Pilots of Small Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems document, which is document number TP 15263, and you'll see that at the very top there are links to the various knowledge categories that will be on the test. The test will be made up of 8 sections, and you'll be asked a number of questions in each section. Here's a breakdown of the number of questions you can expect to get for each section. Section number 1, Air Law, Air Traffic Rules and Procedures, 14 questions. Section 2, RPAS airframes, power plants, propulsion and systems, 2 questions. Section 3, Human Factors, 2 questions. Section 4, Meteorology, 2 questions. Section 5, Navigation, 4 questions. Section 6, Flight Operations, 5 questions. Section 7, Theory of Flight, 2 questions. And finally, Section 8, Radio Telephony, 4 questions. So in total, there are 35 questions that you'll have on the test. Now, most of the questions are going to be in the Air Law, Air Traffic Rules and Procedures category. Now, this is a good thing because most, if not all, of the things you need to know for this section can be found directly in the regulations for remotely piloted aircraft systems. So if you click on Section 1, it'll take you to the area in the document that deals with these issues. Now, one thing that's very important to note is that the document is broken down into 2 columns. One is for what you need to know for small basic operation, and the other, small advanced operation. For this video, I'm going to assume that most people are trying out for the small basic operation. So the check marks represent what you need to know for the basic versus the advanced operation. To the very far right of the document, you'll find the section number where the information can be located, either in the CARS, the main CARS, or in the amendments to the CARS, which represent the stuff you need to know to operate an RPAS, which is Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems, aka drones. If there is no section number listed, it may mean that you'll need to Google the information. The RPAS specific regulations begin at section 900. So anything up to 900 can be found in the regular CARS versus the RPAS specific amendments to the regulations. So here's what I did in order to study for the test. So you're going to start on the drone safety page, and you're going to open up all the documents that you need on this page, starting with knowledge requirements for pilots of small remotely piloted aircraft systems, which is document TP15263. I opened the document on a separate tab by right-clicking and opening a link in a new tab. So this is the document that tells you all the stuff that you'll need to know. The next thing that you're going to do is open the document for new rules for drones in Canada. Click on this, open in a new tab, and here there's another link to published rules, the new rules that are in the legislation. So you've got 2 documents here that you're going to be using. Here you'll see all the different knowledge areas that you'll need to study. So if you click on section 1, which is Air Law, Air Traffic Rules and Procedures, it'll take you to that section and you can see what you need to know. Because I was only interested in the basic operation, I didn't really bother looking at anything that had to do with the advanced operation. I only studied the material that I needed for the basic operation. If you go down a little further, you can see that you get the information here that you will need to study. So 901.02, registration of remotely piloted aircraft, registration number, qualifications to be a registered owner of a remotely piloted aircraft. All of these things I needed to know. And I looked at all the stuff here for a small basic operation, and I could see that I would need to know all this material. So basically everything from section 901.02 all the way down to 901.49. So given that I know that I need to know all this stuff, I went and I looked at all the material in the regulations. I found the information that I needed by going to the find option and copying the section number, and then going down and I read all the stuff from 901.02 all the way down to 901.49 right over here. What I typically did was read it all the way through, and then I would read it all the way through again, and I would do this with every section that I needed to know. So I would read all of this, and I would also very carefully look at the kinds of things that they expected you to know. And this stuff here. It goes into a little more detail. For example, it tells you here that you need to state that RPAS operations must remain in Canadian domestic airspace. So they may ask you a question about what happens if you're near the border and there's a flyway, or can you fly a drone if you're on the Canadian side across over to the American side, that kind of thing. Where it got a little more complicated is where it didn't refer to a specific section number in the drone regulations. When that happened, I went off to the internet and I looked up the kinds of things that they list here. As an example, let's say I go to meteorology. There were a couple of questions on meteorology. I do recommend that you pay attention to that section. One of the things that I did read about and that I do recommend that you look up is stuff related to clouds. I read that fairly carefully, and I know from hearing some of the things that have been said on the web about the test that it's not inconceivable that you may get a question related to clouds and fog and haze and obstruction to vision. One of the things that you have to remember is that you're only going to get a certain number of questions for each section. So you don't have to spend an inordinate amount of time studying everything in detail. You have to go over it, I think, fairly superficially, but get a sense of what it is that subject is about, so that when you get a question, you'll have an idea of where to go to actually find the answers. I didn't know what they were going to ask because we don't have the study guide. We don't have the specific content. So read as much as you can on the subject and hope that you'll have enough that you'll be able to figure out the answer, even if you don't have the specific details or the specific knowledge. And of course, you can always go and do research while you're writing the exam, but you do have to have some ideas as to what it is that you're looking for, and that's why you need to read up ahead of time. It's just a matter of sitting there and reading and trying to figure out what they're going to ask you, and being strategic as much as possible. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is what I did when I was actually writing the test, because there are certain things that you can do that would be helpful while you are writing the test. So that's the next thing. Let's get to that now. All right, so once you've studied the best that you can using the CARS and the amendments to the CARS dealing with drones specifically, and you've gone on the internet and you looked up all the different topics that you need to know, you're going to write the test. And there are some strategies that you should try to use when you write the test. I used a lot of these and I think that they work for me. Number one, if you don't know the answer to a question and you haven't been able to find the answer quickly, go on to the next question. Don't linger on a question too long. Finish all the questions that you know the answers to first, and then go back and try to answer the questions that you didn't know the answers to. That way you'll at least feel comfortable that you've gotten probably most of the questions answered. And let's say you've got 10 questions that you're unsure about. Well, you can take your time and be fairly relaxed about going out and looking for the answers to those questions. Number two, use multiple monitors and computers if you can. I had my main computer screen here with the test, and I put pertinent information on the other screen. And I also had a second computer with a third screen, which I used to research information that I needed to research. If I wasn't sure of a question, I needed to Google something, I went to that third computer. The reason for having as many screens as possible is so you don't clutter your main screen with the test. You don't want to get confused. Okay, number three. Many of the answers that you'll need come from the cars, specifically the area dealing with remotely piloted systems. So I've already mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again because this is really important. You need to read the cars, specifically the amendments to the cars dealing with RPAS, remotely piloted aircraft systems, again and again, because those regulations are fundamental. They're kind of like the fulcrum around which everything else revolves. So it's really important that you know those regulations as much as possible. Number four, for the most part, putting the questions into Google doesn't really work. I know a lot of people think that they'll take the questions and they'll put them in Google and they'll get the answer. But that doesn't work. It didn't work for me. The better solution is to actually put the four answers, the multiple choice answers that they give you, into a Google search field. So put each of the answers that they give you into a field, and that may give you a clue as to which is the correct answer. I did that a few times and it actually worked for me, and I think that it's a better strategy than putting the question into the search field. Now, it doesn't hurt to put the question into the search field, but if you don't get an answer, then I recommend that you put the answers into the search field instead and see if it kind of points you in the right direction. Number five, as much as possible, use a process of elimination and deduction to figure out the answer. Believe it or not, sometimes it's fairly easy to find the answer just by reading carefully all the multiple choice options that they give you. You can very quickly eliminate one, two, sometimes even three of the answers, and therefore deduce what the right answer is, even if you don't know exactly what the answer means. I did that with at least a couple of questions. I just knew that two or three of the answers couldn't be the right answers. So try to use that as much as possible. Number six, know the acronyms. There are lots of acronyms: AGL, ASL, RPAS, etc., etc., etc. Know as many of the acronyms as possible. In fact, I'm going to make a link available below that'll take you to a page with a number of documents that contain relevant acronyms for RPAS and drones. I would look at these documents and I would try to get to know as many of the acronyms as possible so that you're not fumbling and looking to see what each of these acronyms mean as you're writing the test. Number 7, read the questions carefully. Sometimes there's a hint in the question as to which is the correct answer. Read the question carefully, because it's very easy to miss something, and if you miss something, it can point you to the wrong answer. So read the question a couple of times before you choose one of the 4 answers that they give you. And again, use Google as much as possible to confirm the choice that you make. Number 8, it goes without saying, but make sure that you answer all the questions. Don't leave any questions unanswered. There's no deduction or loss of marks if you answer a question incorrectly, so answer every question. Number 9, go over all your answers. If you're not 100% sure of an answer, go with your gut feeling. So if you see 4 possible answers and you think maybe that 2 of them are possible, but you're not sure which, and you can't find the solution online, go with your gut feeling. I did that a couple of times, and I think it actually worked for me. So I think that is not a bad strategy, especially if you've done a bit of research ahead of time. Sometimes you've got the answers inside your head. You might have forgotten it, but maybe it's there and it kind of leads you in the right direction. Number 10, this is really important. You've got an hour and a half. Use the full time that is allotted. Don't stop early. If you have answered all the questions, go over your answers a couple of times, because if you read things over, you might see where you made a mistake, and it may actually lead you to a correct answer when you might have answered it incorrectly the first time around. So don't give up any time. Use the time that's allotted to you, unless you're 100% sure and you're happy with all of the answers that you've given. So these are my suggestions. These are the strategies that I used. I would recommend that you try some of these strategies. Hopefully they're going to help you out, because I know that people don't want to give Transport Canada too much money, so it's great if you can get your certification and you pass the test the first time around. Now, I was really surprised with the mark that I got. I ended up getting a really great mark, which I was very happy with, and I was really kind of surprised by the mark. I got a 91%, which blew me away, because I really didn't expect to do that well. And if you go out and study and take some time to go over the regulation documents, and you spend a bit of time online researching the various topics that are in the document of what you should study, I think you can do well. And when you do well and you get your grade, and it's a passing grade, you'll have your license, and you'll be able to go and fly come June the 1st. Now, I know that people are still going to say, Transport Canada, really missed the ball here, and the way that they've set up this test is not particularly conducive to knowing what a person should know when flying a drone. Nevertheless, given the fact that we're not going to change what Transport Canada is doing, I think it's best to just do what you can to get the best mark possible and get your certification. And I have to say that as much as I think that having this certification, is kind of ridiculous, some of the hoops that we have to go through, bottom line is it's not a bad thing to have, because it actually gives drone flyers credibility. We all know that drone flyers are often criticized, and it's not uncommon for a person to come by when you're flying your drone and hassle you a little bit. And if that ever happens, you can take out your license and you can say, you know what, I am allowed to fly my drone here. The government of Canada has given me permission, and I've got the license to show it, and my drone is registered. So, I mean, that is a good thing about the hoops that we have to jump through, because it gives us a bit of credibility with the public. So anyway, I hope that this is helpful, somewhat helpful, and that when you take the test, you'll do really well. Let me know what you think, and if you do pass the test, please let me know below. And subscribe to my channel because I would really appreciate it, and I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscribers mark. And hit the notification bell to get more information about upcoming videos. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.